Hello children. In our last discussion, we had completed the monocot embryogenesis. Then we had studied various structures of dicot seeds and monocot seeds in detail. That is, we had done bean, castor, then onion and maize grain. Now, today we'll be just completing with the importance of seeds. Last time we were just completing this. This is one paragraph left, and then we'll start with the fruit formation and we'll end up this second lesson today. Importance of seeds, children. Seeds have a very important role, and the most important fact is that they help in the evolution of land plants. The seed habit has given a unique advantage for all flowering plants for survival by the dispersal. Second is, it's a dependable process. Whether it's a gymnosperm or angiosperms, the seed formation is a very dependable process for the race multiplication. Then seeds, they help in perennation because they have good reserves of food, they have inactive enzymes, they have a dormant embryo, a tough covering, they help in perennation. They are good reserves of food. They have foods in various forms that are stored in, and they are having a source of reserve food. They help in variations. Seeds, children, as we know, they are formed as a result of sexual reproduction. So definitely they have genes of both the parents, and then they act as an adaptable measure to the new environmental conditions. They help as a means of multiplication. In various plants, they are the only means of multiplication and for continued existence. Coming to the next point of importance, it's important in establishment of species in new areas by the method of dispersal. They help for origin of various civilizations. We study the history, then agricultural activities, how they adapted, how they changed, then seeds have a major role in them. Then they act as a source of food, children. Seeds, they have reserve food materials in the form of carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, fats and minerals. And then they're very important for the commercial values, that is medicines, then various oils, beverages, for example coffee, etc., paints, clothes, commercial products like spices, etc., and coffee and cocoa, as we know, they're used as beverages. So with that we complete the seeds completely, and moving to our new topic where we talk of fruit formation. Now, we have already discussed, children, about fertilization, and one of the major fate of fertilization is that the ovary changes into fruit after fertilization, and as a result the ovule becomes the seed. Ovary wall changes into fruit wall, what we also call as pericarp. So pericarp has three parts: outer called as epicarp, middle called as mesocarp, and the inner what we call as endocarp. Especially if we talk about mango and coconut, children, here the fruit is called as a drupe. It's known as a drupe. Why? Because it develops from a superior monocarpellary superior ovary, and then it is one-seeded fruit. So for the various reasons that I mentioned, one-seeded fruit as well as how it develops from a monocarpellary superior ovary, these are called drupe. Then when we talk about the mesocarp of the fruits like mango and coconut, in mango the edible pulpy part that we enjoy is the mesocarp, the fleshy part, and in coconut the mesocarp is fibrous. Fruits, broadly, children, we can call them of two types: true fruit and false fruit. True is also called as eucarp, whereas false also called as pseudocarp or spurious fruit. What is the major difference? The major difference is that this true fruit forms or develops from a single superior ovary. Now when we say superior, you recollect from your previous understanding that the floral parts are attached like stamens, etc., petals below the ovary, making it superior. So the fruit here develops from a superior ovary of a single flower with no other floral parts outside the ovary. That is, the true fruit is the one that is developing only from the ovary and with no other floral parts. And which type of ovary? Superior. Example, mango, pea, coconut, etc. Coming to false, the major difference is that if it's here superior, then here it is inferior ovary. And if here no other floral parts were playing the role, here yes, various floral parts will take part in fruit formation. For example, all aggregate and multiple fruits, especially apple, strawberry, fig, pear, etc. And in all these, the edible part is the fleshy thalamus. Remember thalamus, or the receptacle, how we talk in the flower. Now I am introducing many terms which are new terms compared to what your previous learning is. First is anthesis. The period from flowering to fruit setting is called anthesis. Now we all know, children, that in a tree first flowers come, and after fertilization the ovary changes into fruit. So all that time from flowering to fruit setting is called anthesis. Second, flower thinning. Shedding of flowers may occur before or after anthesis, that is, between this period from flowering to fruit setting, the flowers may shed, and this is called as flower thinning. Dew drop. In certain cases, even immature fruits may drop, and this is called as the dew drop. Then, significance of fruit formation. What is the importance? There are many importance if we talk. The major being, fruits, they protect immature seeds from unfavorable environmental conditions because seeds are protected inside. Second, fruit wall when it is young is green. Most of the fruits when they are young, they have green pericarp, and this especially helps them to hide in the foliage, protecting them, that is by providing camouflage. Immature fruits offer chemical defense against animals because they contain unpalatable, that is not tasty, not appealing, and repelling substances like astringents, tannins, sour acids, bitter alkaloids, etc. Right? So this is for protection against the animals by being defensive, like by production of these compounds. Fruits nourish developing seedlings. Fruits act as a food to animals, that is the fleshy part, who help them in dispersal. So this is like a bride being attracted. Fruits are brightly colored, children. Let me just add up, that's our next point. They are brightly colored to attract the dispersing agents. The animals are attracted, and more so for the fleshy pulpy part, and as an act of which they will help in dispersal of seeds. And finally, at maturity, some fruits burst with great pressure to release or help to release the seed dispersal to long distances, right? And that's how we have the importance of fruit production. Coming to the ripening of fruit, what major changes happen when the green fruit becomes variously colored and flavored? The first change is starch changes into sugar, all right? Then reduction in concentration of acids and production of esters. Chlorophyll breaks down to change the color, texture, taste and flavor, right? So with all this, the entire fruit changes in its look as well as taste. Another new term, children, climacteric. This especially we can see in fruits like banana. In some fruits where the ripening is characterized by an increase in respiratory rate, and this is called climacteric. This is usually followed by decaying, which leads to death. Once again, climacteric means in plants or fruits like banana, where the ripening is characterized by an increase in respiratory rate. Both are remember. The ripening goes on by the increase in respiratory rate, and then this is called climacteric, usually followed by decaying, which leads to death. A very important term I am introducing, children. Moving on to our next topic, parthenocarpy. See, usually I have always told you that ovary of the flower changes into fruit after fertilization. Now imagine that something happens and the step of fertilization goes missing, right? So in that case, formation of fruits without fertilization in some plants is called parthenocarpy, right? Such fruits, they are called parthenocarpic. Example, oranges, cucumbers, seedless grapes, bananas, pineapples, etc. right? Now the question arises, is this method good, or that is it advantageous or disadvantageous? The answer is, commercially it's very much advantageous. Why? This is of great commercial value and can be introduced by application of low concentration of auxins and gibberellins. So all the people who are in fruit business, they especially favor parthenocarpy by application of these two growth hormones. Then why does this happen? The question is, if this is happening, or if is it important, and why should it happen? Usually there are three reasons. The first reason is, let's say that the fruit, or let's say the ovary is ready, the stigma is ready, but there is no means of pollination. There is total absence of pollination, and this is seen in banana, pineapple, citrus, etc. Second situation, you have to imagine one step further. Suppose there is a flower, pollination has occurred, and there is fertilization that failed. That is, the insect has brought the pollen grains, but the fertilization failed, especially in certain orchids. Coming to the third, let's see, even one step ahead, pollination occurred, fertilization occurred, but the zygote is not developing further. So obviously there will be a failure, and this is seen in peaches, cherries and grapes. So the word parthenocarpy for the first time was used in 1936 by Gustafson, who proposed that auxins and auxin-like substances are essential for the development of seedless fruits parthenocarpically. Then practical applications, as I told you, of commercial values. So the best varieties of banana, grapes, pineapple, etc. are parthenocarpic. Such fruits have higher proportion of edible part than normal fruits. So these are used in preparation of jams, fruit juices, etc. on a commercial scale. Then seedless tomatoes are also produced parthenocarpically in greenhouses. So I hope you've understood. Till now we have studied many new terms, like I have introduced anthesis, flower thinning, two types of fruits, then dune drop, about the ripening process, climacteric and parthenocarpy, what it is, examples, reasons for parthenocarpy, and also practical applications. Coming to another new terms, we have two terms to introduce, apomixis and amphimixis. Here I have differentiated, and here only we'll define, because definition itself is the difference, right? See, amphimixis is the normal routine way of formation of let's say the formation of new individuals. Let's see how. Formation of new individuals through the normal process of sexual reproduction, that is by gamete formation and the fusion by fertilization. That is, we can see there's ovum that is formed, or the egg, and the male gamete is formed, and normal fertilization and fusion. But apomixis is when formation of new individuals or seeds with embryo growing directly from diploid cells of nucellus, that is a nutritive tissue or integument, mango or orange being the example, or the diploid cell or some other gametophytic cell, apple, rubus, etc., various grasses, and also in the species of Asteraceae, right? So what is the major difference? Here it was by normal sexual reproduction, but here it is normally by any of the cell of the embryo, that could be from the diploid nucellus cells or the integument or any other part of the embryo, right? So in this case, this is what we call as apomixis, and here it was amphimixis. Our type further would be apomixis, right? Term has been given or coined up in 1908 by Winkler, and this is of two types, vegetative propagation and agamospermy. Vegetative propagation we've already detailed much in our previous classes, where this is like propagation or formation of a plant by any plant part except seeds. For example, new plants can develop from root, stem, leaf, buds, right? But no seed that is required, right? So flower is not required to be formed. But what is agamospermy? Here, haploid gametes are not formed, and seeds and embryos, that is baby plant, is formed without meiosis or the reduction division and fertilization, right? So naturally, when there is no meiosis, then how will the haploid gametes form, children? They will not be formed. So agamospermy is of various types. Please see this. This is all horizontally like this. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So if I number them, adventive, embryony, recurrent apomixis, non-recurrent agamospermy, apospory or diploid parthenogenesis, apogamy is the fifth, and the last is diplospory. Now try to explain through a very comparative view of all. If you see this, so we'll be talking about in our horizontal ways like this. The first one, if you can see this, the examples are citrus, opuntia or cactus, mango, etc. In this adventive embryony, what happens is that the embryo or the baby plant is formed from a diploid cell of nucellar tissue or integument, but never from the egg. Now what is the nucellus? Nucellus, if I remind you again, this diagram we have to keep coming back again and again, children. The first class only on this chapter, I told you the nutritive tissue here as the nucellus, right? So if this is the ovule that you're talking about and you're talking of further development of embryo, then what I have said is that here the embryo is formed from the diploid cell of nucellar tissue or integument, that is a covering, but not from the egg. Second, in recurrent apomixis or the recurrent agamospermy, here the diploid embryo sac is formed with a diploid egg, and this parthenogenetically develops into diploid embryo. The third one, that is non-recurrent agamospermy. Here the haploid female gamete without fertilization grows into an embryo. Fourth, the apospory, also called as diploid parthenogenesis. In this, the egg that is diploid 2N, and this is within the diploid embryo sac, directly grows into diploid embryo. Right, by definition, if you are asked what is apospory, then development of diploid gametophyte on the sporophyte without reduction division. See, there is no reduction division that has occurred. Here also it was diploid, and here also the diploid embryo that is formed. So without the reduction division means without meiosis, and this process is called apospory. Further which, apogamy, seen in orchids from the family Orchidaceae. Here what happens, any cell of embryo sac except egg without fertilization that grows into embryo. And which cell? It is usually the synergids or the antipodals. And the last, diplospory. In this, the MMC, that is the megaspore mother cell, directly forms the diploid embryo. So herein you saw, children, 6 types of agamospermy that is coming under apomixis. So please study all of them. Coming to our next topic is importance of apomixis. That why is this important? This maintains hybrid vigor. Very important term I'm introducing, children. Though we have already studied this in cross-pollination, if you remember the advantages. So what is hybrid vigor, children? Offsprings that are produced by cross-pollination have healthier seeds and better yield. And this is called hybrid vigor. That is, the offsprings are better than the parents, and this is called as hybrid vigor. So apomixis maintains hybrid vigor indefinitely, especially seen in cereals, legumes, etc. This provides a better alternative for raising hybrid cereals and vegetable crops from the hybrid seeds. Embryos formed by apomixis are free from various infectious diseases. And then adventive embryos. What is an adventive embryo? More than one embryo in a seed. These are better clones than the plants produced from cuttings. So that completes the apomixis. Coming to our last topic, polyembryony. First, definition. The development of more than one embryo. Poly means more than one. And development of more than one embryo in a seed is called as polyembryony. This was discovered for the first time in 1719 in oranges by Leeuwenhoek.